Hello. All right. We are here at the Burgess Rural Living Museum with Dr. Jodlbauer. Dr. Jodlbauer helped design and put this museum together, which influences or emphasizes local rural living. Dr. Jodlbauer, give us a little bit of an idea about what you did here, what you designed and put together for the community.
Absolutely. So it all starts with a guy by the name of Lawrence Burgess. And he, in 1976, created this thing called the Americana Museum. Now, it was housed in a 3-story chicken house, and Mr. Burgess just loved going to auctions and collecting everything. And he really enjoyed giving tours of the chicken house and, kids and all these sorts of things. But when he dies in 1999, he wills his entire collection to Somerset County. Now, Somerset County is going to have a hard time getting the public through a 3-story chicken house, and by that time, the chicken house had kind of deteriorated to the point where it was unsafe. And so the county hired me to come in and kind of make sense of Mr. Burgess' collection. Now, Mr. Burgess bought everything, and so if he had one washing machine, he had 15. And so one of the things that they're going to task me to do was to take his collection and really whittle it down into a couple of interpretive themes that would really tell the history and the rural side, especially of the county. Now, his collection was mostly focused on the agricultural and kind of blacksmithing side of the county and all of those sorts of things. So it kind of limited it to what we could interpret. But again, collecting these things and instead of having a washing machine and a washing machine and washing machine, actually tell the story of the county through the objects that Mr. Burgess collected. And so, starting from there, I identified what kind of themes we could put together, and they quickly emerged. And so here at the Burgess Museum, we have a 19th century blacksmith carrot shop. We have canning industry, of course, which is critical to Somerset County. Of course, ships, the general store, and really try to tell the complete story of how rural life existed prior to 1930s. From a timeline, it is again about late 19th century through about 1930, but again pre-electrification. Part of the New Deal, Rural Electrification Act of 1936, really changed the county. So this kind of tells the story of prior to that.
That's awesome. How about these tomato canning labels, these canning labels behind us? Can you tell us a little bit about some of the companies, some of the development of the truck canning industry here on the Eastern Shore, something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the agriculture on the Eastern Shore really started to change, especially about the mid part of the 19th century. And it was really going to change after the Civil War, mostly due to the transportation networks that start coming down the shore. Railroad will be completed at Crisfield in 1866. And this provides a new market for Somerset County farmers. Now, instead of the Eastern Shore being oriented to Baltimore, the railroad line orients it to places like Philadelphia, New York, and places north, which of course opens up this huge market for our farmers here on the Eastern Shore. Of course, other technological advancements, things like the steam canning process by the 1870s, now makes it a viable business here. And so truck crops, things like tomatoes, cantaloupes, potatoes, sweet potatoes especially, really now could be shipped to urban markets within a day or two in a refrigerated rail car, which then of course just opens up markets like not before. There's tons of different Somerset County canneries. Kings Creek is one of the more well-known ones, and these canneries were operated. They're going by these canners, but they're going to be worked by a lot of migrant workers. Now, migrant workers will, much like today, follow the harvest, and they would not only be involved in the harvesting, but also the canning process as well. This wasn't fun work. It was hot, especially in tomatoes. You got to steam the skins off. These places are really, really hot. You got the steam engine running, all those sorts of things. So this is really hot, grueling work, but is also one of the reasons why the Eastern Shore is going to weather things like the Depression a little bit better than other urban areas might.
Oh, that makes great sense as well. I noticed one of the labels is the Handy brand. Is that the same Handy family that is known throughout the Eastern Shore here locally?
Well, there's a ton of Handies. I'm not. I don't know the genealogy well enough to know,
right.
But there's certainly a set of Handies that are in Crisfield, and the canning industry really did start in places like Crisfield here in Somerset County anyway, because seafood is going to be really the first thing that they can, and so I can't say for sure. There's plenty of Handies to choose from, but yes. Definitely here in Crisfield.
How about the Wiona? Is that a local company as well?
Absolutely, Westover, Long Brothers. They had quite the operation not too far down the road here, and yeah, absolutely, a very well-known brand for Somerset County.
Excellent. right, so it looks like we're here in front of the chicken industry in the museum. Is there anything you can tell us in particularly about what we see here in this exhibit?
Well, sure. Overall, anybody who's been in Somerset County knows that we're all about the chickens at this point. And so the chicken industry actually started kind of interestingly in about the late 1920s. A lady from Ocean View, Delaware, southern Delaware, is Cecile Steele. Yeah, she tries to order 50 chickens, get 500, but she has a great idea, and she starts selling them as meat chickens. Well, prior to this, chickens are mostly going to be raised just for the eggs. It's the egg industry that's important. But as Cecile Steele starts to sell them as meat chickens, she really inadvertently starts a whole new thing called the broiler industry, and it really starts to take off from there. Now people are going to make money not just from the eggs, but even more so from selling fresh chickens.
Right.
We eat chicken so much it's hard to believe it wasn't a staple at that point.
Absolutely.
And so from there on out, the chicken industry here on the Eastern Shore just kind of blew up. And so overall now you not only have the egg portion of it, but you also have to raise the chicks. And then of course, once you do that, there's all kinds of breeding and science involved. And so that's one of the more interesting things I think of the modern chicken industry is the amount of science that actually goes into breeding a chicken. Of course, the one person everybody knows when it comes to chickens, Frank Perdue, and
right.
and he gets a lot of credit, and he should, because he's the one that really revolutionizes the industry. He takes it from kind of a self-contained rural kind of thing and really kind of explodes it through a couple of different ways. One thing is going to be vertical integration. He's really the first guy who's going to say, okay, I need a place to process my soybean. Then I know what I'm feeding my chickens, and now and I need a place to process my meat. And so in 1969, he opens up the Salisbury facility that most of us are familiar with. And from then on out, he controls every aspect of the operation. His father, I should have said, was actually a chick breeder, so that's where he started out.
Right.
So he's got the chicks, he's got the feed, and now he's got the end product. And of course, everybody knows his marketing genius, this tough old guy from the Eastern Shore who grows the tender birds.
Right.
From this point forward, the chicken industry is now going to be one of the biggest industries in Somerset County, and of course it's just not Purdue. You have Mountain Air and all the other, and so it's a huge part of our county, of our history, and well, at this point, of our culture.
Absolutely. I read about Cecile Steele and her mistaken order a little while ago, and I think it was just amazing to see a housewife, a woman who was working at home to produce chickens for her household. She ends up with a couple hundred too many and turns it into a well-known industry on the Eastern Shore.
And within a decade, she's selling tens of thousands of chickens a year.
Absolutely.
She really blows it up.
Yeah, it goes from 500 to 1,000 to 10,000. It is kind of amazing to see a local entrepreneur and innovator in that field create the early chicken broiler industry in lots of ways. So here we are in front of another interesting exhibit at the Burgess Museum Rural Living Center. This one focuses on the oystermen, the Chesapeake Bay. I know for a while, right, that we were feeding oysters during the Civil War, turning Crisfield eventually into a major, exporter of crab meat and oyster, as it still is today. What can you tell us a little bit about this presentation you have?
Well, sure. Just like the agricultural section, the railroad really revolutionized this industry, and so it reaches Crisfield in 1866, and that town just explodes. The town that's built on oyster shells, it becomes the seafood capital of the world. And now that you have a rail line with direct access to, again, places like Philadelphia, places like Chicago even, now these oysters that are very perishable can be shipped in ice and taken to these huge markets. So much so that we have a huge oyster boom here in the second half of the 19th century, and so much so that by the time you get to the 1880s, the oyster population here in the Chesapeake Bay has absolutely been just decimated, and mostly through the introduction of this new method of harvesting oysters, the dredge. This was innovated in New England. They basically laid waste to the New England oyster fields, and then in search of new grounds came down to the Chesapeake, and of course had some contentious relationships with the people who are already hand-honging here. And so we have what we call the oyster wars, where there was really shots fired over the harvesting of these oysters. Again, by the time you get to the 1880s, the harvest had been just extraordinary numbers, and the oyster population starts to really be depleted. So much so where by the time you get to 1900, the number of oystermen have drastically dropped on the bay, and of course those ones who stayed are even competing more and more for the catch that they need. But just like any other industry where there's agricultural oysters, you also have the ancillary businesses businesses that start popping up around it. And of course, one of the ones is going to be canning. And so just like we have a great history in the canning of truck crops and things like that, it really all starts with oysters and seafood. Later on, mostly for something to do in the summertime or make income in the summertime, you then start to see the marketing of the Maryland blue crab meat, and again, innovations in canning. It allows this high pressure steam canning and things like that. So again, all these ancillary businesses start popping up like places like Crisfield, and Crisfield becomes one of the most populous towns in Maryland within the 19th century. So a little bit of interesting history there.
Yeah, it is extremely interesting, especially when you start digging into the oyster wars. These guys out on these boats literally exchanging gunfire. I think I even read one where they were bringing out their duck hunting, these big rifles to shoot at one another.
That's the market industry for hunting, which is a whole different ball game as well. But again, because of the railroads, now these places where ducks and waterfowl are populated. Now you have access to those places, and so the market hunting industry really explodes. And so you're referring to punt guns, which are these large, almost cannon-like, 12-foot long muskets essentially, and the idea is that you night spot ducks, right? And so you'll sneak up on a big raft of ducks at night and just unload this thing. The market hunter has something like 500 plus ducks a day. I mean, and
wow.
Just like the oysters, this is decimating the natural resources, and this prompts the state of Maryland to do things like, well, Department of Natural Resources much later, but start regulating, and of course the federal regulations of wildfowl.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for letting us spend some time with you today at the museum. This is really an amazing set of exhibits that you've put together to emphasize local history in Somerset County. And really it emphasizes local history across the Eastern Shore in many different ways. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
That's awesome.